how do I begin to plan for some of these expenses when I really don't know what's going to happen? We don't know if we can even go out to dinner, let alone if we're going to be able to take a trip, or, or if the kids are going to be back in school, back in camp. And so people just have no idea really where to begin. And so I want to talk through just how to begin to put some structure around that to the best of your ability. And then also kind of discussing the piece around the income that is really kind of, uncertain for many people as well. I know there's been people. Yeah, exactly, Debbie. I just saw your comment pop up. Yeah. So Debbie injured her back recently and, thought, well, maybe I'll be out of work for a couple of days, but now lo and behold, what's it been? You're going on a month now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my goodness. So I know that's hit the paycheck.
Yeah, now my work told me, oh, we're just going to pay you half the money that you're owed because the government will give you the other half. Well, we know, when's that going to come?
Oh boy.
Like,
yeah. So they were going to pay you half, assuming that you would be supplemented
yes.
on the other half of it. Yeah, right. You had mentioned that. So
Yeah.
So it's kind of a double whammy. It's reduced hours and then only half of that pay for those hours.
Right. I'm sure eventually I'll get it, but I have to finagle until then.
In the meantime. Right. Well, and that's where a lot of people just, if people are working on a commission check, or,
right.
I know certain industries where it's fluctuating, and right now it's quite unknown.
Yeah.
So you'll probably hear a lot of kind of what we were talking through recently, just because I know you and I were personally talking about this, and this is where this topic came from. I'm having this conversation over and over with people. So I wanted to really just open it up for, basically the open forum here. So I hope you get your compensation soon, Debbie. I know that can be a little rough.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. So I do want to just hear, I know, we've kind of already you've touched on, vacations that you're not sure about happening. You've touched on paychecks that may or may not come in. So, are there any specific questions that anybody has around something that you're experiencing, that where you can't plan for it because everything has some uncertainty around it? If there's a specific example, I'd be happy to work with you so you can kind of think about what's going on there. And then I'll give you a little bit of our own example of what Ed and I are currently dealing with. I think I told you, we were planning the wedding for last year, and we just all together scratched that at one point because it was like, okay, this is just not possible. We're not managing it. I know a lot of people were able to pull off weddings in the environment last year, but I just said, we're not doing it. Let's table it till next year. And at that time, we thought we'd be much further ahead in the clear right now than we are. So we are officially planning to get married on June 4th. This is the official announcement for that. I didn't mean to make a formal announcement, but here we are. And trying to plan around that has just been crazy. We don't know who can travel. We don't know if people will want to travel. We don't know what will be open, what will be allowed. And so we're basically just keeping things super simple. Thanks, Debbie. Hearts and balloons. And so I'll kind of share with you a little bit about what we're doing there, and then you might be able to kind of map that over onto other examples that you're personally experiencing. Because I know there's some folks here who are in the middle of a job transition, or, different life stages that are kind of hard to plan for. We're also trying to look at, because you guys know us by now, if we do it big. And so not only are we planning to get married, but we also may be relocating. And we don't know exactly what that will look like right now. But because of California cost of living and everything, we are examining some other options, which is very hard to plan right now. And then also, if we are to relocate, then what that might look like to potentially be able to buy a house. So, no big deal. These are just the things that we're trying to figure out right now. And I only share this with you because I know a lot of times, like in our calls and when I'm working one-on-one with people, I don't necessarily tell you kind of this side of the puzzle of what's going on in my own life. And so I only share that with you to let you know that this is work that I am actively doing, that Ed and I basically sit down every week during our money date and we try to figure out. So, I'd love to hear if anybody's got any comments around like any examples like this. I can tell you more about how we're working on our problem solving, or I can work with somebody if there's a specific example. Does anybody want some input or have a specific question around that? Cost of living is a key for you too, Anne. Yes, I know, we've talked about that. So, okay, well, I'll just kind of share with you just some examples here then of recommendations. So really what I recommend under any circumstance, but specifically right now, is to begin with what you know. Now, people say all the time, I just don't know what to expect. I can't plan for it. It's too unknown. And I get that. But that can also be kind of a thought pattern that we get stuck inside a little bit. And if we take a step back, we often know more than we realize about a certain situation. And sometimes it's just kind of collecting these little breadcrumbs and pulling them together to see, okay, well, what do we know? And what I call this is, what I've been calling this is dropping a pin. It's like, okay, you know you're trying to get something accomplished, whatever that may be, whether that's a home purchase, whether that's a new job, a summer vacation, a car that you need to purchase, whatever it is off on the horizon that's important to you that you don't know where to begin with it, we drop a pin. And what I mean is just kind of like plunk that down, basically to just make a point on the map and get yourself in the ballpark. So you can start to ask yourself things like, when would this happen? And if you don't even know when it would happen, when would I like it to happen? How much might this cost? If I had to make my best guess or my best educated guess, what would I spend on XYZ? And you may not know, you may not really understand all the details of it yet, but it's kind of just your rough draft numbers. And you drop that pin and you kind of just get a mark on the map. And then as things start to progress and you start to be able to answer more and more questions where you get a little scrap of information from, your employer who updates you on the annual bonus that you may or may not be getting this year, or you get an update from the kids' school on what summer camp might look like. As you get these little bits of information, you can then kind of move that pin around and fine tune things as you progress forward and start to be able to answer some of your questions. So I encourage this because a lot of times we kind of just, pull the covers over our head, or we just look the other way and it's like, well, I don't know, so I'm just not going to look at it. Well, we know that that's not effective because inevitably these things are going to take place. And if you can kind of get out in front of them to the best of your ability and at least put some structure in place, then if, the situation changes one way or the other, you're not trying to start from scratch. You may just have to kind of adjust your plans and fine tune things. So this is where I always tell people you want to be more aggressive on your spending estimates. If you think something might be happening, that's where you want to kind of plug in and assume, okay, if this did happen, what would a more aggressive, more than average estimate be for it? Because you don't want to lowball yourself. You want to go on the higher side of it so that then if the actual cost of it comes in under that, then it's kind of icing on the cake and you're going to be okay. You'll be able to make arrangements for it. And then on the other side of that, being conservative on your income estimates. So that way it's like, okay, if you do make a little more money, great. If you spend a little less, great. But at least you've got some edges to whatever it is you're trying to accomplish as you're moving forward.